Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us at the Microsoft Fabric UK user group. I'm your host, Leon Gordon, and it is my absolute pleasure after 7 months to welcome back my co-host, Pragati Jain, and say congratulations on the arrival of your beautiful baby.
Thank you so much, Leon. I'm so glad to be back. And sorry, guys, today I'm having internet issues, a lot of issues going on. So if you guys see me freeze on the screen while speaking or something wrong is happening, I apologize in advance for it. But I'm absolutely happy to be back on the user group finally, Leon. And thank you for your wishes. The little one turned 1 year last month. So yeah, going well, everything.
Oh, absolutely amazing. And like I say, after so long of being away, I'm sure we're going to try and get through today with no issues, but let's see how it goes. So, like I say, Pragati, absolute pleasure to have you back. And it's an absolute pleasure to have all of the community back with us as well. We have such an amazing session for you today. We're going to look at uncovering the secrets of dashboard design alongside Juliana Smith. Now, Juliana is a multi-award winning chartered IT professional with over 17 years experience. So you're in fantastic hands today. So let's go ahead and welcome Juliana to the stage.
Hi.
Hi, Juliana.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Hi,
Yeah.
Juliana.
Hi, Pragati. Hi. It's good to see you.
Likewise,
Yeah,
we're
same
really
here. Likewise.
amazing. So with that being said, shall we go ahead and dive straight in? So let me go ahead and give you center stage, Juliana. Like I say, to all of our community joining us today, please do let us know where you're joining us from. We want this to be a very collaborative session, so please feel free to ask questions throughout, and we will save them for Juliana at the end of her session. Excellent.
So, hi, everyone, and thank you very much for joining today's session uncovering the secrets of dashboard design. Sorry, my slide's not moving. There we go. Before we dive into the content, let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Juliana Smith, as Leon has introduced me. My background is actually in physical oceanography. So I started my career in data science and ocean research. And not long after a very brief role in data science, I moved to become a navigator. And that's when I realized how powerful data visualization can be. After this career as a navigator, I actually quit. And since 2020, I have specialized in Power BI. And for the past about 20 months now, I have deep dive into user interface design and digital accessibility. I also have a blog called SmartFrames UI and a YouTube channel called Accessible BI, where I share insights on Power BI as well as accessible design. So today we're going to unlock the secrets behind powerful dashboard design. So how we can guide our users to insights before they even realize they're looking for them. And our goal today is to go beyond visuals that just look good. We want dashboards that feel intuitive and drive decisions. And we're going to focus in three key areas, which are uh, designing dashboards with purpose, hack human perception, and enhance interactivity and accessibility. So, before we actually start talking about design, let's think everything we have to consider throughout a dashboard or report development cycle. So, we will of course consider Power Query. Do we need to transform the data? Do we need to clean the data? Can I do that? Do I know how to do it in Power Query? So we all worry about that first stage. And then when we finally get the data right, we kind of consider, well, how about my data model? Is that going to be scalable? Am I going to be able to answer all the business questions? Is it right? Right? So you spend a lot of time trying to sort your data model. And then finally you get to that And DAX is tricky. DAX can be quite mischievous and worry about, calculate, and the context and is everything okay? And then we think about, wow, okay, how about performance? Are the visuals rendering in a good time, or my user is going to be waiting forever? Right? And of course, we have data quality and assurance. So you may start with your reports with good data, but something may happen in between after you actually deploy it, and you may have missing data or data in the wrong format. And how can we actually work with that, flag that, and rectify to ensure that our users are seeing correct values, and avoid, of course, the infamous the data is wrong. But even when we consider all of this, we may end up with a report like this. That is not, doesn't mean that it's wrong. The values may well be very correct. It may answering all the business questions and a little bit more. But the way that it is designed, it is quite overwhelming for users to look at this page and understand, okay, what is the message I'm taking away? You actually have to look and try to figure out, try to find what you need. And that report will, without a doubt, fail. And this is what happens when design is put on the seat, right? We also have to worry that not all these technical details that I walk you through, but as well how we're gonna showcase all these amazing work we've done. And that's how we get started talking about designing with purpose. When we talk about designing with purpose, we're talking more than just aesthetics. So purposeful design ensures that users do not only see the data, but they actually truly understand it. And when the users understand, they make confident decisions. And this starts with a focus on user-centric principles. So as designers, as developers, we want to enhance clarity, usability, and impact. And that means we have to think very carefully about how we present information. Then we have user interface design elements such as white space, alignment, hierarchy, and consistency. That shouldn't just be visual choices. They are fundamental when we're talking about user-centric dashboard design, because they guide the eyes of our users. They help reducing cognitive load. So cognitive load is the amount of effort we have to put into to understand the information. And of course, we make our reports, our insights more accessible. So bottom line, when we think about designing with purpose, we're going to improve clarity, usability, and accessibility. Therefore, we will also empower our users to engage with the data in a more meaningful way. So let's now look into some of these user interface design principles and how we can actually apply them in dashboard design. So first, white space. So if you've ever felt quite overwhelmed when you look to a cluttered interface, just like the first dashboard that I showed an example, well, white space is actually the remedy. So white space refers to the empty areas. There we go. The empty areas between elements. So it's not actually wasted space, it actually provides breathing room, and that prevents dashboards from feeling overwhelming. So it helps us reducing visual noise and giving the chance to our users to focus on what they need. And to make the most of it, we, of course, first thing, do not add all the visuals into a page. So even if you can add 20 visuals, it doesn't mean that you should. And of course, there are other things that we can do, like grouping related elements. We can use padding in our visuals to create a sense of balance. Next, we have alignment. So alignment in user interface design refers to the arrangement of elements in a way that creates visual connection. So when we have proper alignment, we also ensure a structured and logical layout, and that will help us guiding our users naturally through information. So when we have elements that line up, like here, we create a sense of order as well as professionalism. And there are different ways we can achieve a good alignment. We can use grid lines. We should, of course, ensure consistent spacing as well as structuring the visuals logically. So if you know that one visual is related to another, you're not going to put them in opposite sides. And then you don't really need to have anything fancy to create your alignment. Something that I found quite useful, I opened Power BI, I opened my canvas. So after I set up my canvas size, I add shapes exactly how you can see here. So these are shapes, and I know that where each one of the visuals will fit, and I know how to align them. So you kind of hit two things, right? It helps aligning, and also here we have here in yellow we have the breathing space, white space, and in blue because we're also putting the elements aligned. So that is a very easy, straightforward, nothing fancy. And then you can listen to you're ready with your report and repeat the same across all the pages, so you keep this consistency. Now we have another concept, which is information hierarchy. So information hierarchy is the strategic arrangement of data based on importance. So our reports and dashboards often convey a lot of information, but as we know, not all data holds equal weight. So information hierarchy is the logical structuring of the content based on its importance, relevance, or sequence. So the purpose is to organize the content meaningfully so the users can understand relationship and navigate efficiently. And a good way of doing that is dividing your Canva into level of importance. So you can have here the first level of importance where you're going to put your high level metrics or important metrics and KPIs. And then we can build the second level of importance. So those visuals will perhaps corroborate or support your metrics. And then the third level of importance, that's where we can add more details. We can add historical data, or perhaps if you want to add a table with a lot of values that it's not the main focus, right? So that will also support whatever you are reporting on from the top to the bottom. So if you think about information hierarchy, I have it is very simple. There's nothing fancy in this report. But if you look how I structure it, I have my first level of importance. So I have a few KPIs. I have my second level of importance. So I added some visuals that will add a bit more details that may explain my KPIs. And on my third level of importance, I did not actually add a trend, but I add a table and a bit of a breakdown by project that I have here, actual against budgets. So I use that kind of a structure to help me building my hierarchy. So we spoke about information hierarchy. We also have a concept of visual hierarchy, which is the arrangement and the styling of visual elements, and that includes size, color, contrast, alignment, spacing. Use those elements to guide our viewers' attention into a specific order. So we can leverage visual hierarchy to reinforce information hierarchy. So what do I mean? So for example, our information hierarchy goal of prioritizing key insights. In terms of visual hierarchy, we can use, for example, larger font or bold colors or top placement, right? An example here, place KPIs in large cards on the top of your report. Another goal of information hierarchy is grouping related content. And in terms of visual hierarchy, we can, to do that, use consistent colors, border, or spacing. So for example, we can cluster metrics under financials and operations and matching visuals. So whatever, you can even make the use of color here to help your users to identify. So you're grouping based on the color. Now I spoke a lot of elements, and we often have to create more than one page or more than one report. And that's something that is key in our development, which is consistency. So consistency is where visual elements, interactions, and data representations follow a predictable and uniform pattern across all views and reports. So that help our users to quickly understand and trust the data, as well as navigate with more efficiency. So our users will spend less time trying to learn how to use the interface to actually being able to make use of it and get insights out of it. And there are different levels of consistency. We have visual consistency. So, for example, using the same colors, fonts, iconography, spacing, and layout patterns throughout your interface. So, think about where you, for example, if you have gray for forecast costs, on all the visuals that you have, you're going to standardize that color. That is maintaining, you're going to help maintaining visual consistency. And here is the example. Sorry, I forgot that. So we have KPI cards using the same font size and color scheme across all your visuals. Whatever you have a KPI, different reports. If it's, if you're creating reports for your own organization or for a client, they may even have some kind of standards, and we should try to stick to them. And the other example is, bar charts using the same colors for actuals and forecast. And then we also have layout consistency, which means that we need to keep the structure of the dashboard uniform. So for example, filter placement, filter or slicer placement, title alignment, and chart order. So for example, we always place the slices on the left, KPIs on the top, and the detail visuals underneath the KPIs. We also have terminology consistency, and I've already caught myself actually not paying much attention. So we need to use the same labels and same naming conventions throughout our report. And sometimes it's just because we spoke to a different stakeholder and they call it a different thing. But for example, if we use week ending in one report, we're not supposed to go to another visual and say end of week, right? We choose what term is what we're going to stick to. And then again, check with the organization if they already have some kind of standard on terminology. And then we have data format consistency. So how we present numbers, dates, and currencies, we have to pick a format and stick to it across the page, across reports. So if we're showing the date with the format, 2 digits for day, 2 digits for month, and 4 for year, stick to it. The same as currency. So we may use with decimals, no decimals. We have to see what you're going to use, and it's very easy to miss. So this is what I talk about consistency. So this is another demo report that I have, that it is 3 pages, and you can see where I placed the title, where I placed the slicer on the top right, how I placed always the KPI cards on the top, and I added the visuals underneath. The button to go to the next page is also located on the same area. And the colors, I use the color consistently. So gray for forecast, and the purple for actual. So that is consistency. And even if you look on my axis, the way that I call end of month, Even I have to go and back and check because it wasn't the same across the visual. So it's very easy to miss. So now that we kind of understand the design side, let's also look into human perception. So how we actually, it's not only how, if we understand how we perceive information, how our brain works, we will be able to design our reports in a way that's easier because it's something that we don't have to think twice. We can just, our users will just look and it will naturally find what they need. So let's understand first eye scanning patterns. So eye scanning patterns, I refer to the natural way that we visually move across a dashboard or screen to find or understand information. So if you open a page, can be a screen, anything, you will not going to read absolutely everything. So we naturally scan in two different patterns I have here. So we have the F pattern. That is usually for text heavy pages. So if you have an article, a blog post, usually we're going to scan on the F pattern. And we also have the Z pattern that is often used and it's quite powerful in visual hierarchies or dashboards. So when we place most critical information along this path, we are helping our audience to see what is the most important first. And if I go back to the example that I just showed, you're going to also see that I also use the Z pattern. So I place my title and my KPI cards on the top. That is the most prominent space. And my slides, it's on the right, on the top right, but it's on the Z path. So anything that falls on that path, we're going to look. And the same thing because I put the next page button on the bottom right. But that's actually where we exit the page. So we start looking at the page on the top left, and the last thing we actually look is the bottom right. And that is really common in Western countries that we read from left to right, from top to bottom. Now, still within human perception, we have Gestalt principle. So Gestalt psychology is from the 1920s, and it's based on the idea that people perceive visual elements as unified wholes rather than individual parts. So this principle taps into the way our brain naturally organize visual information, and that's why it's really powerful. That will allow us, if we tap into those principles, we will design dashboards that are more intuitive because that's how we naturally perceive information. So let's look into some of these principles. The first one is figure ground or foreground versus background. And that explains how people naturally separate visual elements into the main focus or the figure and the background or ground. And that helps them to quickly identify what is important. So by creating a strong contrast between key visuals and the background, we're going to guide our users to look to those key visuals and and that will help to improve clarity and also reduce cognitive load because it will ensure that your users will see straight away what is the most important, and contrast is really good. So here's an example of use of figure ground. So if you see here, we have first key metrics on the top, which is already a good placement, and it's standing out clearly against the background because I'm using a much darker color. So it will grab attention straight away. It will say, I am the figure, look at me. Next, I have another chart that I have a solid and a dash line. So my actual line here, it's got a solid and it will solid style and it will draw more attention than what is the baseline, which is a dash line. And this happens because our brain tends to prioritize bold, continuous shapes over fragmented ones. And that's exactly what I wanted because the most important that I want to show in the visuals is what actually happened. And of course, we have to compare against the baseline for what actually happened. And then the other thing is also the use of a stronger contrast against the background. So the solid line is also that shade of blue that has a better contrast than the dashed line that we have that's gray, blends in more with the background. Another Gestalt principle is on grouping. So there's got quite a few different principles on grouping. So grouping describes how we naturally perceive elements that are close together, similar, or aligned as a part of the same group, even if they're not explicitly connected. So in terms of grouping, we have grouping by similarity, and that that's when elements that share visual attributes, we see them as belonging together. So users quickly can recognize patterns and relationships. And here is another example where I group by my color coding, right? So across all my visuals, I'm using the same color to indicate baseline or forecast and actual. So you naturally know what's happening because I'm using this consistent color. Next, we have grouping by proximity. So we naturally perceive elements that are placed close together as part of the same group, even if they don't look the same. So these help our users to understand which visual data points are related if we place them close together. And that will make the layout more intuitive, as well may reduce the need for extra labels and explanations. So here is an example of these dashboard that I have here with precipitation and ENSO index. So ENSO is the El Nino Southern Oscillation Index and indicates if it is El Nino or La Nina or neutral year. And if you look how I placed the values together, so I have here the maximum precipitation, and I also have which month occurred through, so that's across like a timeline, and as well what's the answer related to that, to the max precipitation. I did the same for maximum temperature, minimal temperature. I don't need anything around them, any box or any frame, but I'm grouping by proximity, and I'm adding white space in between to indicate my user that what is together and what is separate. So that's how we can also use white space to help us grouping. So here is another example of grouping by proximity. So I have here on the cards the values for primary, secondary, and tertiary educations, and we have the average ratio for female and male together. These is a quite prominent, quite important visual because it's got also a box around it, and that we're going to talk about later. But because those are also together, you can understand even if you didn't have the box that they were related. And then we also have these two donut charts that they are placed side by side, and that will signal relationship. And if we move across, we have another visual that says it's the average education ratio, but now it is a trend. Because of the proximity, there is a logical flow. So our users will naturally associate after they look to the donut charts that the one next to them, it is related. So it is associated, but now showing trends, and the others were showing overall averages. So next Gestalt principle is grouping by enclosure. So we perceive elements as related when they are visually enclosed within a boundary. It can be a box frame, a shaded area, a border, anything. And even if they're not close together or if they're not similar at all. And when we do that, we help our users to quickly identify related content by placing within a shared visual container. And our mind prioritizes this principle over all the others. So here is the example that you have a box and you say everything on the box that says primary GPI, they all are talking about primary GPI. The same, the one in the middle is about secondary GPI. and the one on the right, tertiary GPI. So not everything is related, everything is inside the box. There is no need to add more explanation. It just naturally, that's how we naturally understand it. And then we have grouping by connection. So that's we perceive elements as related when they are visually connected by lines, arrows, or other linking elements. So even if they're not close together or if they actually look different. So these help users to understand relationships between data points by visually linking them. And a good example of grouping by connection is the use of line charts. So we have lines connecting the data points, and it kind of visually group each series into a continuous trend. So even though that we have here lines moving up and down, they're crossing around, we can easily follow the flow of each one, kind of understand which line is what. And of course, we have the use of color. So it helps the users to naturally follow the flow of data. And that's why it's so obvious when we see a line chart that that is showing a trend or progression over time. Here's another example of grouping by connection. We have this visual, which it is a decomposition tree, and we have connected lines. So the chart visually connects the revenue, which is the first one on the right, with the carrier and the product, as well as the location. So because you have the line, these connections is implying relationship and hierarchy, and that help our users to interpret the data as grouped or related. So a well-designed and interactive dashboard engages our users because we give them the ability to explore the data on their own terms. Although there is a caveat to that, and we're going to talk about it. So depending on our audience, of course, we should think that one size fits all view may not be the best case. And that's where interactivity can help us increasing engagement. And of course, I'm also going to talk about now about accessibility, which is a critical factor in ensuring that insights are available to everyone, including those with, regardless of abilities, disabilities, and circumstances. So let's start with engagement. So interactivity increases dashboard engagement because it allows our users to explore the data dynamically, and that makes the experience more personalized, intuitive. And there are different ways we can drive interactivity. So of course, we have here the use of filters and slices. So by using filters and slices, we customize the experience. So the filters will allow the users to refine the data they see, and that will ensure that the insights are tailored to their specific needs. And then we have tooltips. So tooltips are great for providing additional details when hovering over visuals. So it's perfect for adding a bit more of context without having to add clutter to our page. But there is something that's really important, that tooltips, they are not compatible with screen readers. And that can actually limit the accessibility for some users. But there are ways to overcome that. We can add alternative text to whatever icon we are using that has the same information that is also on the hover effect. And then we have also drill through. So drill through says go deeper. Drill through empowers our users to explore different layers of data. Again, we don't need to add everything on the same page, right? By using the drill through, we are saving space and we're allowing them to look into different layers without adding a lot of things, and that will create quite a seamless storytelling experience. So we just have to make sure that our report has an intuitive navigation. So we need to make the experience similar. So if you have buttons, tooltips, or anything linked, we have to make sure that they are intuitive, that they have perhaps affordance, and our users will know how to use it. So help our users, help them to quickly find and act on the insights that drive success. But there is a caveat here, right? We need to watch our audience. I've heard from quite a few stakeholders, they don't want to click. I don't want to click anything. I want to look 5 seconds and have my answer. So depending on the type of audience, you may not have, should not actually at all add any kind of interactivity. So that's why it's also very important to get to know your audience and how they want to see the data. So now let's talk about accessibility. So designing dashboards is about should be about creating an inclusive experience. So accessibility is a critical factor because we ensure that insights are available to everyone, including users with disabilities or impairments. And there are quite a few things that we can do in Power BI to ensure we are building accessible reports. So first, support screen readers. So by default, Power BI is compatible with screen readers, but we need to ensure as developers that our visuals, buttons, everything is labeled with alternative text. So everything that's no text need alternative text. And that is very important for users who rely on screen readers to fully comprehend the dashboard content. So next is use of high contrast themes. So when we improve readability, it is actually key in terms of accessibility, because not only for users with low vision, but as well as users who may be in a circumstance that is not beneficial. So you may have low light conditions, you may have a screen that the resolution is not very good, internet connection is not great. So a strong contrast ratio between foreground, and foreground I mean text, icons, our charts, and the background ensures clarity. We can actually follow some guidelines available, which are the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which is known for short as WCAG. So if you follow WCAG, level of compliance AA, it states that we should aim for a contrast ratio of 4.5 to 1 for body text. And when we have large text, which is above 18 points, or if in bold, above 14 points, the contrast ratio should be of 3 to 1. And for no-text elements, so icons, charts, we also have to watch for the contrast ratio, which should also be of 3 to 1. And there are tools available online that we can use for free to ensure we are getting the right contrast, and even allows you to adjust to see what would be a better color to use on a specific background. And then we have avoid color only indicators. So there are some vision impairments like color blindness, which mean that our users may struggle to interpret the data if the only distinction is color. So for example, for red and green color blindness, they can't tell those colors apart. So it's important or to select accessible colors, or to add labels, icons, or alternative formats to improve accessibility. And then we have keyboard navigation. So keyboard navigation is also, Power BI is also compatible with keyboard navigation by default. And we need to understand not all our users rely on a mouse. And to ensure that interactive elements, and these are filters, icons, if they have to be accessible by the keyboard shortcuts. And for that, they also need to have a logical tab order. So the tab order, it is the order that if you navigate a report by using the tab key, what is the order that it goes? And it should match the order that is expected that your user will consume the report. So we have to manually check if the tab order is correct, and if it's not, we need to adjust it. In the next simplified tooltip, so as I mentioned, tooltips, they're not great with screen readers, so add buttons with alternative text. So users who rely on screen readers, they will not miss important insights. And then we have use clear fonts. So stick to readable fonts. They're easy to process. So sans serif font family is ideal because they're not overly decorative. Also be aware that we need to look into the character differentiation. Even sans serif fonts, you may have, for example, capital I and lowercase l. They may look exactly the same. So we need to watch out for that. And in terms of font size, it is really tempting, for example, when we are adding axes or data labels to go to the smaller size. So the smaller size in Power BI is 8 points. And that's absolutely a no-no, not only for users who may have visual impairment, but again, if you're looking your report through a smaller screen, you don't have great lighting, it's going to be a nightmare. So we should try to use no less than 12 points. And as we increase the canvas size, we also need to increase the font size. So when we integrate these accessibility practices, we create that are usable and inclusive. And it's proven that accessible content actually improves overall user experience. So we get to our last session of the last section of this session. We're going to talk about very briefly on some layout tips, and then we're going to wrap. So when we are designing dashboards, right, or reports, layout plays a very important role. So we need to organize the elements in a strategical way, because then we can ensure that our users can navigate information easily and focus on what matters. So here are some best practice for page layout. So top, reserve the top for key insights, place summary metrics, high-level KPIs at the top because it will give immediate visibility. If you remember, it falls on the Z scanning pattern as well. And then we have left-hand navigation, which is a very commonly used design pattern in websites and other applications. So we naturally understand, nobody needs to tell it because we are used to have left-hand navigation. So it's very intuitive. So position there your slicers, menu options for intuitive exploration. If you don't have much to add, we can also add on the top right, because if you remember, it also follows on the Z scanning pattern. Just be aware that if you expect you may have to add additional navigation buttons or slicers, start building with left hand because you're not going to be able to fit much on the top right, and it's better to future-proof your design. Use the center for visuals that support your KPIs, and then bottom for trends, right? Or detailed view. Very important, limit the number of visuals per page, 5 to 7 maximum. And remember, if your users cannot find the insights they need in under 5 seconds, you probably lost them. So dashboards are more than just data displays. So they are our chance to guide and empower our audience. And when we design with intention, we shape how our users interact with information, creating clarity and focus. Leveraging how we naturally perceive visuals allow us to lead our audience without effort, and we're going to connect them with the insight they need in a much quicker way. When you design your report, think of CRAP. So that will help you build user-friendly designs. And what is CRAP? So we have C for contrast. So ensure that you have a good contrast between your elements. And we have R for repetition. So maintain consistency and unity in your design. We have for alignment that help us provide order and structure, and that will also ensure a clean and organized layout. And we have P for proximity, so group related elements together that will enhance readability and comprehension. Show less, say more, and you leave no room for noise, just meaningful and impactful insight. So let's move from design fails to design wins. Thank you very much.
Juliana, absolutely amazing session. So thank you very, very much for going through that for us. Just want to say I've definitely learned quite a few things about accessibility today. And I think that for everybody joining us and watching, we build these reports, we extract, transform, and load the data for people in the business to get value from. So we have to make sure that everybody in the business is able to access it first and foremost. So I thought it was a fantastically valuable session. And how about yourself, Pragati?
Thank you.
If you guys can hear me, yeah, this session was quite good. I mean, Juliana, because there are few things. I mean, I myself design reports, but there are few things I don't, pay attention to. But like looking at the slides, the pictures differences that you show, how it creates, was really amazing. So thank you so much for coming and speaking for us. This session was really enlightening for me today. And obviously coming back to the user group after 7 months, this was like such a great thing to start with. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm glad you liked.
Amazing. And we do have some time for some questions coming in now as well. So we do have some commentary. So Scorebat said it's very informative. Thank you. So fantastic. I'm really glad you enjoyed this session. And then let's go ahead and go through a couple of questions now. So the first one comes in from Andrew K. And Andrew says, hi, Juliana, do you ever use external tools like Figma or PowerPoint to create backgrounds, or do you just stick to doing this within Power BI?
Sometimes I use PowerPoint if I want to have just a background. I don't add boxes for visuals, because I think if you use a separate interface, you're gonna have to have quite a bit back and forward if you decide to change anything. So I like to keep it simple. So depending on, I just use shapes, but shapes can be quite annoying. So if I want to add like a darker border and in the middle lighter, I would use PowerPoint, but I don't get stuck to any external tool. We can't do everything in Power BI, and I think it's actually make it simpler and easier to edit as well.
Perfect, thank you. And we're going to go on to Ramez. Now, Ramez asks or says that he or she, usually place the navigation and filters on the right so the user can focus on the visuals and KPIs first. Is there a reason that you suggest the left-hand side rather than the right?
So yes, so left-hand side navigation is a very, very common design pattern. So when we open a website, for example, we naturally understand, nobody needs to tell us that there is navigation on the left-hand side. And usually it's when you have a lot of, of course, you have the top as well. When we have a lot of different paths, the preferred option is the left-hand navigation. And because we are so used to see that when we are browsing online, we don't even think, what is this? We naturally see that and understand as navigation or interactivity. So that's why it's just because it's a common design pattern for people. Maybe someone has never seen a dashboard, but if they've seen a website, they will not need further explanation.
Excellent. And let's go on to the next question. I apologize. I don't think I'm going to attempt the name this evening, but I will read out the question. So I think because of the way you read the screen, the Z pattern that you showed, users know the filters are there, but that's also an assumption. So is there anything you'd just like to clarify there, Julian? I believe that was a comment in regards to the
so it's not an assumption. So there are studies that confirm that those scanning patterns are very, very efficient. So I would say that if anything that you place that falls on that pattern, it will pop out straight away. So you can use top right for slices, depending on how many you have. But again, this is there is a science behind it. And I think if you compare one interface that doesn't have any scanning pattern to another one that's got a scanning pattern, you're going to find much easier to understand and get insights, especially when talking about visual information. Or when you get a book, for example, we don't read it. The first thing we do is scan. So that is when you fall on the F pattern, that is for text heavy interfaces. But there is science behind it. So if you ask me, why scientifically, I'm not going to be able to tell you, but because that's just something that's supposed to be natural. We don't have to think twice.
Thank you. And let's go on to this next question from Wellington. And they ask, how could I ensure the tab navigation on my reports?
So on the view page, you can see the elements. So you have layer order. I forgot the name of the panel now. I think it's selection. So you're going to have layer order. Layer order is how the elements stack over each other. And tab order, you're going to see on the side tab order. And you're going to see each one of the visuals. Before you do that, you can test. Navigate your report, just clicking tab and see how it goes, right? And then on the tab navigation, you can click on each one of the visuals and draw arrows going up and down. So I actually have a video on YouTube showing how to do it. It doesn't take long. So there is where you see the same with layer order, we have the option for tab order.
Excellent. And we have shared the link to YouTube and also to your socials within the chat as well today. So we'll go on to our next question. This one comes in from Aranjunai, and they ask, are there any approved design principles that details all of the elements that you've discussed here today?
So everything that I discussed here, you can find a reference. So Gestalt principles is very, very popular, not only for dashboards. You see a lot in website, web development. So yes, the same if you look for user interface elements. So you're going to see all of that. It's just how you can apply those elements, all the theory into dashboard design. So that takes time because there is a lot going on. And as I said, sometimes there's not only one element alone that makes the impact. You're going to see this, like I said, I'm grouping, I'm using white space. So it's very difficult to explain as separate blocks because at the end, that is using them together that help us building a more intuitive interface.
Fantastic. And Shamim here is agreeing with you with your earlier point in regards to how Western text is read from left to right. So our brains naturally read things starting from that point in both the F and the Z pattern that you referred to earlier. So it's great to get that context as well. And then we have this question coming in from Richard, and this is in regards to why you would need to tab around your report. So you might want to go back to your earlier point there, Juliana.
Yes. So not everybody uses the mouse. Some users may. So for example, I have nerve damage in my hands, and it was really difficult to find a mouse that I can use without having mobility issues. And you have people who, so for example, people with visual impairments, they will not rely on the mouse neither. So it's just think about I can use the mouse now without an issue. I found a very good one. But some people may not be able to use the mouse, and that's how they use the tab navigation instead of the mouse.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much. I hope that answers your question there, Richard. Again, Aaron Junai just saying thanks. It was a fantastic session. And then we have this name that I'm unable to pronounce this evening, going into a bit more detail in regards to where you can find the information directly within Power BI for tab order as well. So Juliana, let me go ahead and once again thank you very much again for today's session. I think everybody, including myself, has learned how we can start to not just make reports but data more accessible to individuals within organizations as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'm really glad you learned something, or I don't know, got something out of this session. Thank you.
Amazing. So let's go ahead and close today's session. Then Pragati, once again, thank you very much for coming back after going to enjoy life, what life has to offer, welcoming your newborn into the world. And obviously, congratulations once again for turning 1 as well. But it's a pleasure to be back with us now.
Yeah, thanks, Leon. I'm so happy to be back. So yeah, thank you everyone who attended today, and please don't forget to fill out the feedback form, and that's how we'll get you the right content on the user group. So definitely go and fill out the feedback form. The link is in the chat. Thanks everyone.
Fantastic. And thank you once again, everybody, for joining us in the Microsoft Fabric UK user group. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you've been here with us. Stay safe. Speak soon.